So one thing I quickly noticed when unboxing this kit is the wheels. They are just the standard M4 wheels, which look pretty good, but I'd rather have the competition ones. Now luckily my buddy Casey over at Slowly's Models had already designed a set of these wheels, so I quickly grabbed those, and I will be leaving links in the description down below to his Instagram and also his Cults 3D. They were printed on the Anycubic Mono, a fine desktop printer I've done a review on a little while ago. Feel free to check those out on my channel. Printed at a 0.01 millimeter layer height. It took about 4.5 hours, but in the end it has a super clean print and ready to use part. Along with wheels, some other parts needed to be still prepped, primed, and painted. So they were prepped first. I cut some of the photo etch parts out of the sheet, cleaned them up a little bit, and then glued them together with the resin centerpiece in order to create the disc brake. All the other parts were prepped too. Firstly, moved into the spray booth and I applied a couple coats of primer, some liquid surface primer from Tamiya. This is suitable for resin, metal, and plastic, so that's great use for all of these different material parts. After priming all of the parts, I moved on to painting them in their own separate colors. Some were painted black as I wanted to apply a bit of carbon fiber decals to them later, and the lower half of the mirrors needed to be black and the top section needed to be carbon, so that came out really well with a matching color to the carbon fiber decals and already a matching color to the base part. Some other parts I painted in clear red were the taillights. I've done this with the airbrush with great success as it gives a really smooth and nice even finish. So on these M3 and M4 models in real life, when you were able to order them, you could order them with some steel brakes or the upgraded carbon ceramic ones. Now in this kit there were no steel brakes to be found, apart from the photo etch piece, but those replicated the carbon ceramic ones. So after priming those parts, I needed to paint them in the carbon ceramic color. So since I decided not to use the standard wheels but upgrade to the competition versions, I also needed to paint those, of course. They were firstly painted in a silver base coat, and later on I will add the diamond cut effect by coloring in the inside with a black. And again, with those carbon ceramic brakes being on here, the standard color for the calipers with carbon ceramics is a gold. So I took out a Porsche Gold from Zero Paints that I had in my stockpile of colors and applied that in a couple light coats. The paint was set to cure for a couple of hours, and then I could move on to adding the carbon fiber decals. On the rear diffuser, around the area where the exhaust sits, I wanted to add the carbon fiber too, so I quickly made a template prior to painting, cut that out, and after painting you can see me apply it here. For the mirrors, I made a small template too on the top section and also a small piece for the side. Both were applied and conformed with decal softening and setting solutions. After those had been applied and fully formed, I let them cure overnight and then applied a nice glossy top coat. I applied the same clear coat to the wheels as well to make it a lot easier to paint that insert piece with the black and just wipe off all of the excess paint. And while I was still having the airbrush out anyway, I figured I'd quickly mask off the body too. A lot of the trim pieces on the side around the windows needed to be painted in a gloss black, so I quickly just masked it all up and applied a couple coats of gloss black. A lot of the panel lines had been scribed out prior to painting and therefore are nice and deep. And just to give them a bit more of a shadow effect and a bit more of a realistic look, I'm adding some panel line accent color in there. So most of the exterior trim pieces around the windows are supposed to be in a gloss black, but not all of them, so I masked it up again and I added a quick layer of flat black for a piece that is supposed to be a semi-gloss matte rubber look. And while I still had that on the brush, I moved on to the wheels. Those had cured a couple of days with the clear coat being applied, and then I could start the diamond cut effect. I'm just applying a bit of black paint on the insert areas and then remove the excess black with a cotton swab, and therefore reveal the silver again and create that effect. The headlights themselves were already nicely detailed. I simply just painted them black and then added a lot of the extra details on there with a silver paint and a brush. Now that pretty much all of the details have been painted on, I could start the assembly process. First, just finishing off the interior by gluing on the rear view mirror, and then I could start with the dashboard and slowly work my way around with all of the clear parts. In these Alpha model kits, the clear parts for all the glass all around is just a flat sheet, pre-cut and pre-painted. Therefore, it is a bit harder to glue in place as it's not really conformed to the round shape of the actual glass. So I first lay down a small bead of glue on one side. I'm using Bob Smith Industries Super Gold Plus. Put the glass in on that side, let that glue cure. And then once it is cured, I move on to adding another bead on the other side of the part and then gluing that piece carefully in as well. For the side glass, I decided to do a sort of open window style and just remove the front part of the glass, cut that off, glue the part where the mirror needs to be mounted in, of course, and that rear section too. Once that was all completely cured, I moved on to inserting the interior and also putting the chassis in. So the chassis itself is a pretty plain piece, as you could have seen in the unboxing video, and I didn't really want to spend any time on it, so I just painted the exhaust muffler part and inserted it in. All of the taillight and headlight buckets have been glued in place. Some of the exterior trim is now being put on, and this small side piece was actually the incorrect piece, but I didn't notice in time, so it was already painted. I added the decal and even clear coated it on top. But actually, these small side pieces were supposed to be the rear reflectors. Now, even though they fit perfectly on the side, I still didn't really notice until at the end of the build I needed to paint those smaller rear reflector pieces, and the pieces weren't there, of course, as they were already used as some side trim pieces. Now that was easily fixed, as I could just paint that base plate on the inside of the bumper silver and add some clear red and just move on with other pieces. So if you were to spec an M4 or M3 back in the day with a competition package, you of course get the upgraded wheels and upgraded seats, and normally the exhaust tips would be black, but I didn't really like that finish as it pretty much hides the tips and you don't really see them anymore that well. So I decided not to go for that upgrade on the competition package and just leave them in the silver finish from the metal part. The main disc had already been painted in the carbon ceramic paint, and there was an additional piece that needed to be glued on top of that disc for even more details, and that was just left in the bare photo etch metal part. I just needed to fold it all over and glue it on the disc itself. So since the wheels I'm using are not the same as the stock wheels from the kit and they were custom designed, they of course didn't fit perfectly. I'm not sure if the stock wheels fit perfectly straight out of the box, as I didn't use or test fit them, but this one needed to be adjusted just a small amount, as the main pin that can be glued in can be shortened a bit and therefore create the correct offset. Same goes for the rear if necessary. In this case it wasn't necessary and it did fit perfectly in there, so it was just all glued together and put in place. A couple final details are left, and that is a couple of decals on the center caps for the wheels and also some window wipers. So I did receive a couple questions lately about photo etch window wipers, how they all work and how they need to be glued together. Now I'm still not really sure how it all works, as most of the parts just fit together by feel and not really looking at the instructions, as those mostly don't really make sense. A couple of the parts need to be bent over, then some more parts need to be glued in, some more bending is required and a bit more glue, and once that is all completed you just need to paint them black and glue them in place. So prior to gluing in all of the clear parts, I left the protective film on there, and therefore once the entire model is finished I can just peel that off and don't have to worry about cleaning the glass. That is a nice tip to keep in mind when building one of these alpha kits, as the glass is a bit soft and can easily be scratched or bent, so just leave these protective film pieces on there until the end when you're finished. I hope you guys enjoyed the video series on this M4 build, and I'm curious to know what you think of the outcome. Let me know down in the comments below what you think of the color combination and what you would do on your own. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.